I'm Melanie Mitchell, 34, and 10 years of my life went into building Innovate Tech from nothing. When my phone lit up with that text from my brother Kevin, I felt my stomach drop. Expect a call from our lawyer, the company I'd poured my heart, soul, and every waking hour into, the one where I'd given my family generous equity but kept 51% ownership, was being stolen right from under me. I stared at those cold words, my confusion quickly hardening into a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I typed back one simple word: understood. They had no idea what I was about to do. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on my backstabbing family, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you're ready for some sweet justice. The journey to founding Innovate Tech wasn't one I'd planned. With my engineering degree fresh in hand, I graduated straight into the worst recession in decades. After 63 rejected applications and countless unanswered emails, I realized no one was going to give me the opportunity I needed. I had to create it myself. My office was my parents' garage, transformed with a folding table from Walmart and a second-hand computer. My startup capital, $5,000, saved from summer jobs through college. Those early days blur together in my memory, sleeping on a camping mat beside my desk, showering at the gym to save time, and living on ramen noodles and coffee. Coding for 18 hours straight became my normal routine. When I finally collapsed into sleep, I'd dream in programming languages. The first 6 months were the hardest. No customers, no revenue, just dwindling savings and mounting credit card debt. My parents would peek into the garage with concerned expressions, gently suggesting maybe it was time to apply for real jobs again. I'd smile and tell them I was close to a breakthrough. Sometimes I even believed it. That breakthrough finally came with our first product, a streamlined software solution for small business inventory management. What made it special wasn't just the user-friendly interface, but the affordability. While major software companies charged thousands for complex systems, I created something simple that small businesses could actually afford. When our first 10 customers signed up, I celebrated with my first non-ramen meal in months, a burger that tasted like victory. As word spread and our customer base grew, I realized I couldn't do everything alone anymore. My first hire was Jessie, a brilliant programmer I'd met at a tech meetup. Then came Dana, who handled customer service with a warmth I couldn't master while coding 20 hours a day. For the first time, I could sleep more than 4 hours without the business falling apart. When we hit 100 customers, we moved into our first real office, a tiny space above a pizza shop that perpetually smelled of pepperoni. But it was ours, with a sign on the door and everything. That's when I made the decision that would eventually lead to my downfall, bringing in family. Kevin, my younger brother with a business degree, seemed perfect to handle our growing financial needs. My sister, Amanda, with her marketing background, could help spread the word about our products. And cousin Ryan, who'd worked in sales for years, could build our client base faster than I could alone. I brought them in with generous equity packages, 10% each, while maintaining my controlling 51% share. The remaining 19% was divided among early employees and investors. "This is amazing, Mel," Kevin had said, hugging me after signing his contract. "I'll never forget what you've done for me. We're going to make this a family legacy." Amanda had promised. Those words would come back to haunt me. The next few years were a blur of growth. Our small business software expanded into a full suite of products. Our client base grew from hundreds to thousands. Revenue hit $1 million, then $5, then $10 million annually. We moved to progressively larger offices, eventually occupying 3 floors in a downtown building with our logo displayed proudly outside. Through it all, I maintained the same work ethic that had gotten us started. While we could now afford actual employees and I no longer needed to sleep on the office floor, I was still first in, last out. My personal life remained nearly non-existent. Friends' weddings were missed for product launches. Dating happened in sporadic bursts between major projects. Having children remained a distant, someday dream. Brian came into my life during our 8th year of business, a kind, patient man who somehow understood my devotion to Innovate Tech. "Build your empire," he'd say. "I'll be here." In retrospect, he saw what I couldn't, my family taking advantage of my single-minded focus on the company. The first red flags were subtle, Kevin suggesting we could optimize efficiency by restructuring departments I directly oversaw. Amanda mentioning that clients found me a bit intense during meetings. Ryan wondering aloud if my technical background might be limiting our vision for expansion. "Maybe you should focus on product development and let us handle the business side," Kevin suggested during a leadership meeting. "You look tired, sis." I'd brushed these comments off, attributing them to normal growing pains in a rapidly expanding company. I trusted them completely. They were family, and family wouldn't betray you, right? The dinner with Tricor Solutions should have been a straightforward affair. They were potentially our biggest client yet, a nationwide chain looking to overhaul their entire digital infrastructure. After months of proposals and demonstrations, this dinner was supposed to be a formality before signing contracts. I arrived early to the restaurant, reviewing presentation points with our team. When Kevin walked in with Amanda and Ryan 15 minutes late, I noticed immediately something was off. They'd clearly been discussing something that stopped when they saw me. "Sorry we're late," Kevin said with an easy smile. "Last-minute prep." Throughout dinner, I presented our implementation strategy to the Tricor executives. Every time I made a point about our technical capabilities, Kevin would jump in. "What my sister means is," he'd say, or, "While Melanie handles the coding side, our executive team has developed a more comprehensive approach." By dessert, I felt like I'd been rendered invisible at my own meeting. When the Tricor CEO asked about our 5-year expansion plan, Kevin answered without even glancing my way. "We're moving toward enterprise-level solutions," he said confidently. "The small business market that Melanie initially targeted was a good starting point, but we've outgrown that vision." Outgrown my vision? I nearly choked on my water. This was the first I'd heard of abandoning our core market, the very clients who'd made us successful. On the ride back to the office, I confronted him. "What was that about outgrowing our small business market?" Kevin glanced at Amanda in the back seat before answering. "It's just business talk, Mel. Tricor wants to hear we're thinking big." "That's a pretty fundamental pivot to decide without discussing it with the CEO, I replied. "You've been so busy with the technical side," Amanda chimed in. "We didn't want to bother you with every little strategic discussion." "Every little strategic discussion, like completely changing our company's direction?" That night, I stayed late at the office, troubled by the interaction. Walking to the break room for coffee around 9:00 p.m., I overheard Amanda's voice from the conference room. The door was ajar. "Melanie's brilliant with product, but she's becoming a liability in client meetings," she was saying. "She's too attached to the original vision. We need someone more flexible at the helm." "The board's concerned too," came Ryan's voice. "They're wondering if we need a more experienced CEO to take us to the next level." I froze, coffee mug halfway to my lips. The board was discussing replacing me? Since when did my family members have private conversations with our board of directors? Over the next few weeks, I noticed more troubling patterns. Calendar invites to important meetings would arrive last minute, or sometimes after the meetings had already occurred. "Sorry, it was set up on short notice," was the common excuse. Decisions about hiring senior positions or exploring new market opportunities would be presented as already finalized, needing only my rubber stamp approval. When I pushed back, I'd get exasperated sighs and comments like, "We discussed this last week, Mel, don't you remember?" I began keeping detailed notes of these instances, something my practical engineering mind suggested might be useful someday. The gaslighting became so blatant that I started questioning my own memory and judgment. The stress took its toll. I lost 15 kilos in 2 months. Sleep became elusive, with 3:00 a.m. anxiety spirals becoming my new normal. I developed a persistent eye twitch that makeup couldn't hide during video calls. I caught glimpses of myself, hollow-eyed and tense, a shadow of the confident founder I'd once been. Brian noticed, of course. "You need to confront them directly," he urged one night as I picked at my dinner, another meal I had no appetite for. "This is your company, Melanie. Don't let them make you doubt yourself." He was right. The next morning, I called Kevin into my office and closed the door. "I need to understand what's happening," I said firmly. There are meetings I'm not being included in, decisions being made without my input, and I overheard discussions about replacing me as CEO. Kevin's face registered shock, then quickly composed itself. You're being paranoid, Mel. The pressure is getting to you. Don't gaslight me, Kevin. I know what I heard. Look, he sighed, leaning forward with a concerned expression that didn't reach his eyes. We've all noticed you've been struggling lately. The company's bigger now, more complex. Maybe you need a break, a sabbatical to recharge. We can handle things while you're gone. The suggestion sent a chill down my spine. Once I stepped away, even temporarily, I might never get back in. Similar conversations with Amanda and Ryan yielded the same concerned expressions and suggestions that maybe I needed rest. I felt like I was in some bizarre psychological thriller where everyone was telling me I was losing my mind. In a last-ditch effort to repair our fractured relationships, I tried giving them more responsibility and recognition. I publicly credited Kevin with financial strategies that were actually my ideas. I let Amanda take the lead on client presentations. I approved Ryan's proposals without the usual rigorous vetting. None of it helped. The secret meetings continued, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, the sideways glances between my family members. Something was building, and I was increasingly certain it would culminate in my removal. But how? I still owned 51% of the company. They couldn't force me out without my consent, could they? The San Francisco trip wasn't supposed to end early. I'd flown out for a 3-day tech conference, planning to network with potential partners and scope out competitors. But after the second day's sessions, I developed a migraine so severe that even with medication, continuing seemed impossible. Without telling anyone, I changed my flight and headed home a day early. It was nearly 8:00 p.m. when my Uber pulled up to the Innovate building. I expected the office to be mostly empty, perhaps with a few developers working late as usual. So I was surprised to see the lights on in our main conference room and several familiar cars still in the parking lot, including those belonging to Kevin, Amanda, and Ryan. Curious, I entered quietly through the side door using my key card. As I approached the conference room, I heard Kevin's voice, unusually animated. The documentation is solid. We've recorded every instance where her decisions have cost us money or opportunities. But she still owns 51%. Came the voice of Bernard West, one of our board members. We can't simply remove her without her agreement. That's where this comes in, Ryan replied. Our attorney found a clause in the original incorporation documents. If the majority of the board determines the CEO is acting against company interests, they can force a new share issuance that would dilute her ownership. My blood ran cold. They weren't just talking about removing me as CEO. They were plotting to take away my controlling ownership of my own company. She's lost her vision, Amanda added. Innovate Tech has outgrown her. She's still treating it like a small business when we could be competing with the big players. The engineers respect her, but the business needs different leadership now. And you're certain about these performance issues? Asked Diane Chambers, another board member whose voice I recognized. We've been documenting everything, Kevin replied. Times she's missed meetings or been unprepared, clients who've expressed concerns about her technical focus, opportunities we've lost because she wouldn't pivot quickly enough. It's all here. I heard the sound of papers being passed around, what I assumed was their case against me. 10 years of pouring everything into this company, and they'd been building a file to push me out. What about the legal challenges? Bernard asked. She won't go quietly. That's why we've brought in Patricia, Ryan said, and I heard a new voice I didn't recognize, presumably their attorney. She specializes in corporate restructuring and complicated leadership transitions. We have several avenues, this new voice explained. The share dilution is one approach. We've also identified potential breaches of fiduciary duty we could leverage if needed. Breaches of fiduciary duty? I'd never done anything but put the company first, often at great personal cost. And the timeline? Diane asked. We're ready to move now, Kevin said confidently. The documentation is prepared. We'll call an emergency board meeting next week, present our case, and vote. Once the board approves the share issuance, we'll inform Melanie. By the time she can respond legally, it'll be done. She'll be upset, obviously, Amanda added, her voice carrying a rehearsed sympathy that made my stomach turn. But we'll offer her a generous exit package and a ceremonial title. Founder and technical advisor, or something similar. She founded this company, Bernard noted, sounding uncomfortable. Are we certain this is necessary? The company has outgrown her, Kevin repeated firmly. This isn't personal, it's business. Not personal. They were my family, plotting to steal my company behind my back, and it wasn't personal. I'd heard enough. Part of me wanted to burst through the door and confront them, to watch their faces as they realized they'd been caught. But the strategic part of my brain, the part that had built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing, held me back. Knowledge was power, and they didn't know I had it. Instead, I silently backed away, returned to the side entrance, and left the building. Once in my car, parked a block away, I finally let the tears come. 10 years of work, my family, my company, all of it built on quicksand. When I'd cried until no more tears would come, I drove home in a daze. As I pulled into my parking space, my phone pinged with a text. It was from Kevin. Expect a call from our lawyer. So they'd moved up their timeline. Perhaps someone had seen me at the building after all. It didn't matter now. What mattered was what I would do next. I barely remember entering my apartment. Brian took one look at my face and knew something was catastrophically wrong. I collapsed onto our sofa, phone still clutched in my hand, and told him everything in a hollow voice that didn't sound like my own. They can't do this, he insisted, pacing our living room. You built that company. You own the majority share. They found a way around that, I said, the lawyer's words echoing in my mind. Some clause about diluting shares if the CEO acts against company interests. That's ridiculous! You are the company's interests! I nodded mechanically, but my mind was already racing ahead. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder and more focused. I picked up my phone. I need to call Rachel. Rachel Solomon had been my personal attorney for years, handling everything from our initial incorporation to our first major contracts. She'd stepped back as we grew and developed an in-house legal team, a team that apparently now answered to my family, not me. Despite it being nearly 10 p.m., Rachel answered on the third ring. I put her on speaker and explained the situation as clinically as I could manage. Those ungrateful little... Rachel caught herself. Sorry, let me think. First thing tomorrow, I need all the incorporation documents, bylaws, board minutes, everything. But Melanie, if you still hold 51% ownership, you're still in control. They can't call a board meeting without you. They mentioned some clause about share dilution if I'm acting against company interests. There are sometimes provisions like that, but they're difficult to enforce, especially against a founder. What's their evidence? They've been building a file. Missed meetings, client concerns, lost opportunities, all manufactured or exaggerated, I'm sure. And this emergency board meeting is next week? That was the plan, but Kevin just texted that I should expect a call from their lawyer. They might be accelerating things. Then we need to accelerate too, Rachel said firmly. What's your goal here, Melanie? Fight to stay or get out with what you deserve? The question hit me like a physical blow. Until that moment, I hadn't considered that staying might not be an option. Innovate Tech was my life's work, my identity. But the thought of continuing to work with family members who had so thoroughly betrayed me, I need to think, I said finally. After hanging up with Rachel, I sat in silence, Brian beside me, his hand warm on mine. The company I'd built from nothing was about to be stolen from me by my own family. The betrayal cut so deep it felt physical, like a knife between my ribs. What do you want to do? Brian asked softly. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to think strategically rather than emotionally. If I fought, it would be ugly, public, protracted. Even if I won, the company would be damaged, possibly irreparably, and I'd be working alongside people I could never trust again. I think I need to let go, I said finally, the words painful to speak aloud, but on my terms, not theirs. Sleep was impossible that night. Instead, I researched, made notes, and formulated a plan. By dawn, fueled by determination and too much coffee, I had my answer. Tech Innovate had been our closest competitor for years. Where we focused on small to medium businesses, they targeted larger enterprises. Our software suites were complementary with minimal overlap. They'd made overtures about a potential merger in the past, which I'd rejected, wanting to keep Innovate Tech independent. But independence was no longer an option. At 6:00 a.m., I called Jonathan Grant, Tech Innovate's CEO. We'd met at various industry events over the years and maintained a cordial professional relationship. "Melanie?" He sounded surprised. "Everything okay? It's pretty early. I need to meet with you today privately. It's about an acquisition opportunity." There was a pause. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the Grand Hotel at noon? The bar there is quiet, and no one from my industry typically goes there." Another pause. "I'll be there." I spent the morning preparing with Rachel, who arrived at my apartment at 8:00 a.m. with a stack of legal documents and a determined expression. We went through every possible scenario, every question Jonathan might ask, every counteroffer he might make. The Grand Hotel's bar was nearly empty at noon on a Tuesday. I spotted Jonathan immediately, tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed as always. His eyebrows rose when he saw Rachel beside me, but he greeted us both politely. "I assume this is serious if you've brought counsel," he said once we were seated in a private corner. "I'm selling my shares in Innovate Tech," I said without preamble. "All 51%. I want Tech Innovate to buy them." To his credit, Jonathan didn't show surprise beyond a slight widening of his eyes. "May I ask why? Last time we discussed a potential merger, you were quite adamant about remaining independent." "Circumstances have changed," I replied simply. "Are you interested or not?" "Of course I'm interested, but I need to understand what I'm buying into. Is there something wrong with the company I should know about?" Rachel interjected smoothly. "Innovate Tech is financially sound with strong growth projections. This is a personal decision on Melanie's part." Jonathan studied me for a long moment. "Family trouble?" I kept my expression neutral. "The terms would include retaining all current staff, except for 3 specific executives who would receive appropriate severance packages. Those details would be handled by Tech Innovate after the acquisition." Understanding dawned on his face. "I see." We spent the next hour negotiating. Jonathan was shrewd but fair. By 2:00 p.m., we had a preliminary agreement. $75 million for my 51% ownership, with provisions for retaining key employees and maintaining the Innovate Tech brand as a division of Tech Innovate. The 3 family members would be removed from their positions with generous but not excessive severance packages. One crucial condition: absolute confidentiality until the deal closed. No one, not my family, not the board, not even my closest colleagues, could know until it was done. "We can fast-track this," Jonathan said. "Have the papers ready by tomorrow morning, fund transfer by noon." "Perfect," I replied, feeling oddly calm now that the decision was made. "And, Jonathan, thank you." He shook his head slightly. "Don't thank me. This is an excellent business opportunity for Tech Innovate. I'm sorry it comes at such a personal cost to you." That night was the longest of my life. I lay awake beside Brian, going over every detail of the past 10 years. The company I'd built from nothing, the family I'd trusted and brought into it, the betrayal that had broken everything beyond repair. "Are you sure about this?" Brian asked softly in the darkness. "Yes," I replied. They left me no choice. At 7:00 a.m. the next morning, I met Jonathan and our respective legal teams at his lawyer's office. The paperwork was extensive but clear. With each signature, I felt a piece of my old life falling away. At 11:58 a.m., Jonathan received confirmation from his bank. The funds had transferred. Innovate Tech was no longer mine. "It's done," he said quietly. I nodded, feeling strangely light. "The press release goes out at 2 p.m. Yes, my team will handle everything from here." I shook his hand, thanked Rachel, and walked out into the bright midday sun. For the first time in 10 years, I had nowhere I needed to be. No crisis to solve, no company to run. I pulled out my phone and looked at Kevin's text from the night before. "Expect a call from our lawyer." After a moment's thought, I typed back a single word. Understood. Then I drove to the Innovate Tech building one last time. It was lunch hour, and I knew from years of habit that Kevin, Amanda, and Ryan would be at their usual restaurant, plotting my removal over expense account meals. The irony almost made me smile. I used my keycard one last time, went to my office, and packed my personal belongings into a single box. Photos, awards, the coffee mug my first employee had given me years ago. So little to show for so much time. As I walked out, I nodded to the receptionist. "Have a good day, Tara." She smiled, unaware that anything had changed. "You too, Miss Mitchell." I placed my keycard on her desk. "I won't be needing this anymore." I was sitting at a small cafe 3 blocks from the Innovate Tech building when my phone buzzed with a news alert at exactly 2 p.m. So, breaking. Tech Innovate acquires controlling interest in Innovate Tech. The press release was live. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. Kevin's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. It rang again, immediately. Declined. Then Amanda. Declined. Ryan. Declined. The text messages started flooding in. Kevin. "What have you done? Call me now." Amanda. "Melanie, please tell me this isn't true." Ryan. "You can't do this to us, to your family." The irony of that last message almost made me laugh. I silenced my phone, finished my coffee, and walked to the hotel where I'd booked a room for the night. I didn't want to be at my apartment when they inevitably showed up there. By the time I reached my hotel room, I had 17 missed calls. By dinner, 25 voicemails filled my inbox, their tones evolving from shock to anger to desperate pleading as the reality of what had happened sank in. I ordered room service and finally listened to some of them. Kevin's first message, voice tight with barely controlled rage. "What the hell, Melanie? You sold your shares without even talking to us? Call me back immediately." Amanda, already tearful. "How could you do this? We're your family. Please call me back so we can fix this." Ryan, attempting a reasonable tone that didn't mask his panic. "Mel, there's been a huge misunderstanding. We need to talk right away." The later messages grew more desperate as they apparently learned the details of the deal. Kevin again. "Tech Innovate is saying we're being replaced. They can't do that. You can't do that. I have a contract." Amanda, now sobbing. "Please, Melanie, I have a mortgage, car payments. I need this job. We can work this out. I know we can." Ryan, mask of reasonableness gone. "You backstabbing? You'll regret this. We're family. You don't do this to family." That last one made me flinch. I don't do this to family? After what they had planned to do to me? Around 8:00 p.m., my phone lit up with an email from Jonathan. "Melanie, transition proceeding as planned. Your family members have been informed of the organizational changes. As expected, they're not taking it well. They've threatened legal action, but our counsel assures me their positions are without merit, given the clear documentation of the share transfer. I've assigned security to monitor the situation. Let me know if you need anything. Jonathan." At 9:17 p.m., my building security desk called. "Miss Mitchell? Your brother and sister are here, insisting on seeing you. They seem quite agitated. Should I send them up?" "No," I replied. "I'm not available. Please ask them to leave, or you'll need to call the police." "Understood, ma'am." I could imagine the scene. Kevin, red-faced and demanding. Amanda, tearful. Both insisting that they needed to speak with me right away. The family emergency gambit had worked countless times in our childhood to get what they wanted, but not this time. As midnight approached, the calls finally slowed. My phone showed a final tally. 38 missed calls, 27 voicemails, 52 text messages. 10 years of building a company, gone in a day. A lifetime of family relationships, shattered. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt only a profound exhaustion and, underneath it, the first stirrings of relief. It was over. They couldn't hurt me anymore. The next morning brought a flurry of industry news articles about the acquisition. Most were straightforward business stories. Tech Innovate expands market share with strategic acquisition, and software competitors unite in surprise deal. A few hinted at drama. Innovate Tech founder sells controlling interest, family executives ousted. Jonathan called mid-morning. "The transition team is in place. Your family members have been escorted from the building with their personal effects. The remaining leadership has been briefed." "How are they taking it?" I asked, surprised to find I still cared. "Shocked, but adapting. Your CTO, Jesse, asked me to tell you he understands and to call him when you're ready." That brought the first real pang of regret. Jesse had been with me almost from the beginning. I owed him an explanation at least. "Thank you, Jonathan, for everything." "It's business," he replied, echoing Kevin's cold words from the meeting I'd overheard. "Though for what it's worth, I think you made the right decision. They left you no choice." Throughout the day, the desperate messages from my family continued, though at a slower pace. Their tone had shifted again. Now they were focused on legal threats. Kevin: "Our lawyer says we can challenge this sale. You had a fiduciary duty to inform the board before selling your shares." Amanda: "The company bylaws required you to offer your shares to existing shareholders first. You're going to lose everything when this goes to court." Ryan: "Hope you enjoyed your little power play because it's going to cost you. We're filing for an emergency injunction tomorrow." I forwarded these to Rachel, who responded quickly. "Empty threats. The sale was completely legal. They're grasping at straws." By the evening of the second day, a new kind of message started appearing, from former colleagues, clients, even competitors. Some expressed shock or disappointment, but many offered support and understanding. "Heard the news. Call me when you're ready to talk. Whatever happened, I'm on your side. Jesse. Figured something big was coming when you canceled our lunch last week. No judgment here. Take care of yourself. Dana, my first customer service hire. Industry won't be the same without you at the helm. Let me know if you need anything." Michael, a longtime client. These messages hit harder than my family's threats. These were the relationships that mattered, the ones built on mutual respect and shared goals rather than blood ties and obligation. On the third day, I received a final email from Jonathan. "Legal team confirms all challenges from your family members have been rejected. Their employment has been formally terminated with severance as agreed. Security protocols remain in place, but no further incidents have occurred. When you're ready to discuss your next steps, I'd welcome a conversation. Your experience and vision would be valuable to us in many capacities." It was a generous offer, but I already knew I wouldn't accept it. That chapter of my life was closed. What came next would be entirely new. After 3 days of silence, I finally responded to Jesse's message. "I'm ready to talk. Coffee tomorrow?" Then I sent one text to my family, a group message to all three. "I'll meet you at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. This is not negotiable." It was time to face them one last time. The Riverside Cafe sat on a quiet corner overlooking the park, far enough from Innovate Tech's offices that we wouldn't run into any employees. I arrived 30 minutes early, selected a table in the back corner with a clear view of the entrance, and asked the manager to keep other patrons at a distance. As a precaution, I'd arranged for one of Jonathan's security team to sit unobtrusively at the bar. Kevin arrived first, precisely at 2 p.m., always punctual, one of his few admirable traits. His normally immaculate appearance was noticeably disheveled, wrinkled shirt, dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed. He spotted me immediately, his expression hardening as he approached. "Melanie," he said stiffly, taking a seat across from me. Amanda and Ryan arrived together minutes later. Amanda's eyes were red and puffy, her makeup hastily applied. Ryan looked angry rather than defeated, his jaw clenched tight. After they sat down, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. I let it stretch, studying their faces. These people I'd known all my life, who I trusted implicitly, who had planned to take everything from me. "Well," Kevin finally snapped, "you called this meeting. What do you want?" "I want to understand," I replied calmly. "I want to hear you explain in your own words why my family decided to betray me." "Betray you?" Amanda's voice rose shrilly. "You're the one who sold the company out from under us without a word, without even a warning." "Without a warning," I repeated, keeping my voice level. "Like the warning you were going to give me before diluting my shares and removing me as CEO?" Their expressions flickered. Shock, then guilt, quickly masked by defiance. I don't know what you think you heard, Kevin began. Stop, I cut him off sharply. I was there, Kevin. Last week, when I was supposed to be in San Francisco, I came back early and heard everything. In the conference room. Every word about the documentation you'd been gathering against me. Every detail of your plan to use that clause in the incorporation documents to dilute my shares. Every comment about how the company had outgrown me and needed different leadership. The color drained from their faces as realization dawned. I'd known everything before making my move. You misunderstood, Kevin attempted weakly. We were just discussing contingencies, options. Options that involved stealing my company? I pulled out my phone and played a recording, one I'd made standing outside that conference room door. Their voices, clear and damning, filled the quiet corner of the cafe. The documentation is solid. We've recorded every instance where her decisions have cost us money or opportunities. She's lost her vision. Innovate Tech has outgrown her. We'll call an emergency board meeting next week, present our case, and vote. Once the board approves the share issuance, we'll inform Melanie. By the time she can respond legally, it'll be done. I stopped the recording and looked at their stricken faces. Still want to claim I misunderstood? Amanda broke first, tears spilling down her cheeks. We never meant to hurt you, Mel. We just thought the company needed to evolve. You were so resistant to change, so fixated on your original vision. My original vision built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing, I replied. My original vision gave all three of you jobs when you needed them, equity when you hadn't earned it, and opportunities you'd never have had otherwise. It wasn't personal, Ryan insisted, echoing Kevin's words from the meeting. It was business. It became personal the moment my family conspired behind my back, I said coldly. The moment you decided loyalty meant nothing compared to control. And what would you call what you did? Kevin demanded, finding his voice again. You sold us out to our biggest competitor. You got your millions while making sure we lost everything. I protected myself when I discovered you planned to take everything from me, I corrected him. And you haven't lost everything, Kevin. The severance packages are generous. 6 months' salary, health benefits, glowing references. You'll land on your feet. Unlike what you planned for me, a ceremonial title with no real power, watching as you dismantled everything I built. We would have taken care of you, Amanda protested weakly. Like you took care of me? By documenting my every misstep? By holding secret meetings with the board? By planning my removal like some corporate coup? None of them had a response to that. I need to know why, I said after a moment, my voice softer now. Was it just greed? Power? Or did you really believe I was hurting the company? Kevin stared at the table, unable to meet my eyes. It started small. Conversations about how we could grow faster if you weren't so cautious, how much more we could be worth if we pivoted to enterprise clients. He shrugged helplessly. Then it became a plan, and once we started down that path, it was exciting, Amanda admitted, wiping at her tears. Feeling like we were taking control, making big moves. We convinced ourselves we were doing what was best for Innovate Tech. And for yourselves, I added. Yes, she whispered. For ourselves too. Ryan, ever the pragmatist, leaned forward. What happens now, Mel? Is there any way to undo this? To work something out? I shook my head. The sale is final. Tech Innovate owns controlling interest in Innovate Tech now. Your positions have been eliminated. There's nothing to work out. And our shares? Kevin asked. The 10% each we still own? Still yours. Currently worth about $14 million each at the acquisition price. You're not destitute, Kevin. His eyes widened slightly at the figure. Even now, after everything, the money was what he cared about most. What about you? Amanda asked. Will you work for Tech Innovate now? No, I'm done with Innovate Tech, done with all of it. Just like that? 10 years of your life and you walk away? Kevin sounded genuinely confused. You left me no choice. I stood up, gathering my purse. I've said what I came to say. Don't contact me again. Not for reconciliation, not for business advice, not for anything. As far as I'm concerned, I no longer have a family. Amanda let out a soft sob, but made no move to stop me. Kevin's face had gone stony. his pride preventing any show of remorse. Ryan looked calculating, probably already planning his next career move. As I turned to leave, Kevin called after me. "Was it worth it? Destroying your family for revenge?" I paused, looking back at them one last time. "I didn't destroy anything, Kevin. You did. That when you decided a company was worth more than your sister." I took a deep breath. "I hope the money brings you joy. I really do, because it's all you have left." Then I walked out of the cafe into the bright afternoon sun, feeling lighter with each step. The truth had been spoken, the ties had been severed. Whatever came next would be entirely up to me. The fallout continued for weeks. Industry blogs picked up on the drama with headlines like "Family Feud Leads to Surprise Tech Acquisition" and "Innovate Tech Founder Outmaneuvers Family Coup." Former employees gave anonymous interviews sharing rumors and speculation. For a brief period, I was the center of a minor tech industry scandal. Some painted me as ruthless and calculating, the founder who sold out her own family for a payday. Others portrayed me as the victim, the innovative creator pushed out by greedy relatives. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. My family made several attempts to challenge the sale legally, but as Rachel had predicted, none gained traction. The documentation was impeccable, the transfer completely legal. After a few weeks, the lawsuits were quietly dropped. I heard through industry contacts that Kevin had landed a CFO position at a mid-sized tech firm, a step down from Innovate Tech, but still prestigious. Amanda was consulting for marketing agencies. Ryan had started his own sales training business, leveraging his experience and industry connections. They had survived, just as I knew they would. The severance packages I'd insisted on with Jonathan had given them time to regroup. The shares they still owned provided financial security. I hadn't sought to destroy them, only to protect myself. As for me, I disappeared from the tech scene entirely. No interviews, no conference appearances, no LinkedIn updates. I needed time and space to process everything that had happened and to figure out what came next. The first month after selling Innovate Tech passed in a blur of sleep, takeout food, and mindless television. After 10 years of 18-hour workdays and constant pressure, my body and mind simply shut down, demanding the rest I'd denied them for so long. Brian was my anchor during this time, handling practical matters and gently encouraging me to eat, shower, and occasionally step outside. He never pushed for decisions or plans, understanding intuitively that I needed this fallow period to recover. "You'll know when you're ready to think about what's next," he said one evening as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset. "There's no rush." He was right, of course. The $75 million sitting in my investment accounts meant I never needed to work again if I didn't want to. Financial pressure, the constant companion of my adult life, had vanished overnight. By the second month, the fog began to lift. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Winters, who specialized in entrepreneurial burnout and family estrangement. Our twice-weekly sessions became crucial to my healing process. "What you're experiencing is similar to grief," she explained during one session. "You've lost your company, your professional identity, and your family relationships all at once. It's natural to feel adrift." "But I chose this," I pointed out. "I sold the company. I cut ties with my family." "A choice made under duress is still traumatic," she replied gently. "And choosing to protect yourself doesn't mean you don't grieve what you've lost." Those words unlocked something in me. I'd been holding back my grief, feeling I didn't deserve it since I'd engineered my own exit. Once I gave myself permission to mourn, for the company I'd loved, the family relationships I'd treasured, the identity I'd built, healing began in earnest. I started reaching out to friends I'd neglected during the Innovate Tech years. Coffee dates with college roommates, dinner with neighbors we'd barely spoken to despite living in the same building for years. Long phone calls with my elderly aunt in Arizona, my mother's sister, unconnected to the family drama. "I always thought those siblings of yours were a bit too impressed with themselves," Aunt Linda commented dryly when I finally told her what had happened. "Your mother would have been appalled by their behavior." My parents had passed away years earlier, my father before Innovate Tech was founded, my mother just as it was beginning to succeed. I'd often wondered if things would have turned out differently had they lived. Would their presence have prevented my siblings' betrayal? Or would they, too, have been seduced by the allure of control and power? 4 months after the sale, I received an unexpected email from Jesse, my former CTO. Lunch next week? No agenda. Just miss your face. Promise not to ask about your mysterious disappearance from the tech world unless you want to talk about it. I surprised myself by accepting immediately. We met at a small bistro, far from the tech district. The first few minutes were awkward, neither of us quite knowing how to navigate our changed relationship. But soon, we fell into the easy rhythm we'd always had. How is it? I finally asked. Working for Tech Innovate? Jesse considered the question carefully. Different. More corporate structure, more processes. But they've kept most of the engineering team intact and given us good resources. He paused. They're not you, Mel. No one could be. But they're not bad. I nodded, relieved. I'd worried about the teams I'd left behind. What about you? He asked. Any regrets about selling? No. It was the right decision given the circumstances. I twirled pasta around my fork, gathering my thoughts. I regret that it came to that point. I regret trusting people who didn't deserve it. But mostly, I regret losing 10 years to a company that became more important to me than anything else. Jesse nodded, understanding in his eyes. So what's next for the brilliant Melanie Mitchell? The question didn't trigger the anxiety it once would have. Instead, I felt a small flutter of excitement. I'm not sure yet, but I'm starting to have ideas. Those ideas crystallized over the following weeks. I began researching, making notes, having exploratory conversations with people in different industries. A pattern emerged, a new direction that combined my technical skills with the lessons I'd learned through Innovate Tech's rise and fall. 6 months after selling the company, I launched a small consulting firm specializing in helping female entrepreneurs navigate the tech industry. Not how to code or build products, plenty of resources existed for that, but how to protect themselves legally, balance growth with sustainability, and maintain control of their companies through various funding stages. I kept it intentionally small. Just me, an assistant, and a network of trusted specialists I could bring in as needed. No family members, no board of directors, no outside investors. The work was fulfilling in a way Innovate Tech hadn't been for years, less about growth metrics and more about genuinely helping others avoid the pitfalls I'd encountered. Alongside the consulting work, I used a portion of my Innovate Tech proceeds to establish a tech incubator specifically for women-founded startups called Ground Floor Ventures. It provided not just funding, but mentorship, legal guidance, and a supportive community. The applications flooded in immediately, confirming what I'd long suspected. There were brilliant women with transformative ideas who just needed someone to believe in them and show them the path. Brian proposed on our 3rd anniversary, 6 months after I'd sold Innovate, a simple private moment on the same balcony where he'd assured me there was no rush to figure out my next steps. I've watched you rebuild yourself these past months, he said, holding the ring. Stronger, wiser, but still just as brilliant and determined. I want to build a life with that woman. We married 3 months later, a small ceremony with close friends and my Aunt Linda conspicuously absent any Mitchell siblings. For our honeymoon, we traveled for 2 months, visiting places I'd always been too busy to see. The ancient streets of Rome, the misty mountains of New Zealand, the bustling markets of Marrakesh, the world beyond quarterly targets and product launches. It was during this trip that I received an unexpected email from Amanda. The subject line read simply, "When you're ready." I almost deleted it unread, but curiosity, or perhaps some lingering sense of connection, made me open it. Mel, I don't expect forgiveness or even a response. I just need to say I'm sorry. Not for the consequences I'm facing, those are deserved, but for betraying you. For letting greed and ambition override loyalty and love. For forgetting that you gave us opportunities we hadn't earned and trust we didn't deserve. I'm seeing a therapist now. Probably should have done that years ago. She's helping me understand the jealousy I've always felt toward you. Your intelligence, your vision, your strength. I think I wanted to take your company because I could never be you. If someday you're willing to have coffee, I'd be grateful. If not, I understand. With regret and love, Amanda. I read it 3 times, feeling the words settle into the wounded places inside me. Not healing them, that would take much more than one email, but acknowledging them in a way that felt important. I showed it to Brian over dinner that night. "Are you going to respond?" he asked. "Not yet," I replied. "Maybe someday, but not yet." I didn't hear from Kevin or Ryan. Perhaps their pride prevented them from reaching out. Perhaps they hadn't experienced the same remorse Amanda had. Or perhaps they simply understood that some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. A year after selling Innovate Tech, I received news that the company was struggling under Tech Innovate's management. Jonathan had been replaced as CEO after a corporate restructuring. The new leadership had pushed too hard toward enterprise clients, alienating the small business customer base I'd cultivated so carefully. Several key engineering team members, including Jesse, had left. I felt a complex mix of emotions: sadness for the employees caught in the turmoil, vindication that my outdated vision had been more viable than my family had claimed, and a surprising lack of personal investment. Innovate Tech was no longer my company, no longer my problem. I had built something new. Ground Floor Ventures had funded 12 startups in its first year, 8 of which were showing strong early growth. My consulting practice had a waiting list of clients. Brian and I were discussing starting a family, something I'd always deferred for someday when Innovate Tech was stable enough. 2 years to the day after selling my company, I finally agreed to meet Amanda for coffee. We chose a neutral location, a small shop in a neighborhood neither of us frequented. She looked older, more subdued, but there was a clarity in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Thank you for coming," she said simply. "I'm not sure why I did," I admitted. We talked for almost 2 hours about her therapy journey, about my new ventures, about the lessons we'd both learned. We didn't discuss reconciliation or rebuilding our relationship. Some damages run too deep for easy repair, but we spoke honestly without the manipulation and hidden agendas that had poisoned our last years at Innovate Tech. As we prepared to leave, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever speak to Kevin or Ryan again?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know. Maybe someday. But they would need to understand what they did wrong first, not just regret the consequences." She nodded. "They're still angry, still blaming you for everything." "That's their choice," I said, feeling no particular emotion about it. "We all make choices, and we all live with the results." Walking away from that coffee shop, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. Not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition that what had happened was now firmly in the past. My present and future belonged to me, shaped by my choices rather than reactions to betrayal. The company I'd built from nothing had been taken from me by the people I trusted most. But in losing it, I'd found something more valuable: self-knowledge, true independence, and the wisdom to build a life that couldn't be stolen by anyone. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, I hope my story gives you strength. Sometimes the greatest success comes after our most painful failures. Sometimes we need to lose what we thought was everything to discover what truly matters. And sometimes the family we choose proves more loyal than the family we're born into. Have you ever had to walk away from something you built or loved because staying would have cost you too much? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their struggles. Remember, your worth isn't determined by what others try to take from you, but by what you choose to build despite their efforts. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.